Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Laura Prada from the Telesur Studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. The Embassy Protection Collective in the United States are planning to continue their efforts to preserve the respect for international law and sovereignty despite their forced expulsion from the Venezuelan embassy in Washington, D.C., where they were living as guests. Earlier, here in Telesur, we had the opportunity to speak to David Paul, member of the four members of the Embassy Protection Collective, and he explained their plans for the future. Let's hear what he said.
The embassy was only one part. We see the takeover of the embassy by opposition or Trump is part of the ongoing coup. And the ongoing coup is still happening regardless of who is in the embassy. And so our efforts to try to work against the coup continue. We are going to have a large demonstration at the United Nations to raise the issue of international law and respecting the Vienna Convention, which protects embassy, where that's going to happen in September. And we have other demonstrations outside the embassy, at the White House, and there's going to be over the next few weeks, bringing up the same issue of the illegality of the government's actions and the illegality of any attempts, coup attempts against the government of Venezuela. So there are many organizations. We are having meetings between different organizations and individuals who want to continue with this effort to promote the idea of respecting international law and sovereignty, for Venezuela's sovereignty to decide their own government, to decide their own policies.
David also explained us about the collective efforts to unify solidarity movements across the United States behind the elected government of Venezuela.
Well, it's a complicated issue because the fact that the solidarity movements in this country, there are many of them, but they all have their own issue that they focus on. And part of the issue around this attack and intervention and coup attempts of Venezuela, because it is so important, as you said, and very current, it's been our challenge to try to reach all the other solidarity movements, whether it's Palestine or Sudan or other countries in Latin America, to see the common bond, the common goal and reason to pull together our efforts around Venezuela, because we share the same concerns about international law. All these solidarity movements trying to support other countries' sovereignty. It's the same issue: U.S. intervention and avoiding treaties and going against international law. So it's a challenge for us to convince and encourage other movements who have their own focus to come together and focus on Venezuela currently. And we're doing that. We're getting a number of anti-war groups, the Veterans Voice for Peace, the Black Alliance, a number of other groups who normally focus on other things. We're coming together around Venezuela, and our idea is to continue to grow that. We're reaching out to many other community organizations and solidarity movements to try to join our forces on this issue, which is an issue that affects all of us.
So this is what he had to say, and now we continue talking about United States, where the Justice Department has announced 17 new charges against the WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. Assange is still being held in detention in London after he was dragged out of the Ecuadorian embassy in April, where he was enjoying asylum since 2012. The United States is already seeking his extradition on one count of disclosing classified documents. The 17 new charges are related to violations of the Espionage Act, and each carries a maximum sentence of between 5 and 10 years prison. And now, to have more information about Julian Assange's new charges, we have the following report that sent us earlier our correspondent, Alina Duarte. Welcome, Alina.
Muy buenas tardes, así es, el fundador de Wikileaks, Julian Assange.
WikiLeaks co-founder Julian Assange faced 17 new criminal charges, which allege that he's conspired with former Army intelligence analyst Chelsea Manning to obtain and publish secret documents in 2010. The charges include the violation of the Espionage Act, which has prompted press freedom advocates to criticize the move, calling it a breach of the First Amendment of the Constitution relative to free speech and free press. The 17 counts include 1 count of conspiracy to receive national defense information, 3 counts of obtaining national defense information, and 13 counts of disclosure of national defense information. Assistant Attorney General John Demers, the Justice Department's top national security official, said Julian Assange is no journalist and that no responsible actor, journalist or otherwise, would publish the names of individuals he or she knew to be confidential sources. The U.S. State Department is accusing Assange of aiding and abetting Manning with stealing U.S. files and recklessly endangering confidential sources in the Middle East and China to benefit a foreign country. Assange is currently in London fighting extradition. If found guilty of the 17 charges, he can be jailed for close to 170 years. WikiLeaks has said that this is a threat to journalism and the First Amendment. Some media professionals are questioning what this sentence could mean for other journalists who will or have published confidential information.
Assange, quien actualmente ya se encuentra luchando contra los procedimientos de extradición.
Thank you, Alina. And now we go to India, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi has won the general election, securing another 5-year term. According to the Election Commission, Modi's Bharatiya Janata Party, or BJP, is on course to take 300 of the 543 seats in parliament. Over 600 million people voted in the marathon election, which took 6 weeks to complete.
Today, we witness citizens from every nook and corner of the country filling these beggars' hands. I bow to my head before Indians' 1.3 billion citizens.
In Indonesia, residents in Jakarta have called for peace as municipal workers clean up the city after protests that left 6 people dead. Municipal workers cleared up burnt vehicles, broken pavements and debris. People urge the government to ensure peace prevails and ask the protesters not to use violence to express their discontent with the electoral results that confirm President Joko Widodo's win.
This protest was a matter of rights. It is measurable. I'm hoping for a non-anarchist protest. With these kind of incidents, it is very annoying. And I see this not only from the protesters, but from the police or the military side too. They were very persuasive and treated protesters inhumanly.
And both presidential candidates in Indonesia have expressed concern with past election violence. Widodo asked for stern law enforcement action against rioters, while his rival, Prabowo Subianto, called on his supporters to avoid violence.
We will never give room to rioters who will damage our country, who will damage the unitary nation of the Republic of Indonesia.
We have to consider the public's interest. Therefore, I appeal, always be calm and patient. On the other hand, I appeal to law enforcers to be wise and refrain. We all look for the best solution for this nation.
And the Houthi armed forces in Yemen say they struck the airport in the Saudi Arabian city of Nahran, with an explosive-laden drone. The group said they would increase their offensive against Saudi Arabia, which leads a military coalition in the region, attacking Houthi-controlled areas. The invasion has led to what has been described by the United Nations as the world's worst humanitarian crisis. The Houthi strike was aimed at a U.S.-built Patriot missile system. A previous drone strike has reportedly hit a weapon depot at the same airport on Tuesday. Houthi forces have also claimed responsibility for last week's attack on Saudi oil assets. The Houthi retaliation signals as an important shift in the conflict. And now we talk about Argentina, where workers from public television stations are condemning what they say is censorship and political persecution by the government of Mauricio Macri and by the president of the Argentinian Journalists Forum. What is this about? Well, we show you on the following story.
Se convierta en un vocero del gobierno.
In a statement distributed on social media, public television workers reject the censorship they have suffered since President Mauricio Macri took office.
Yesterday, we suffered an attack on our freedom of speech. 3 co-workers were sanctioned, and a legal process was started against them for referring to the political situation in Venezuela as a coup attempt, which is nothing less than the truth, and for calling Juan Guaidó a self-proclaimed president. On top of this, on Saturday, we were the only outlet in the country that did not cover the news of Alberto Fernández running for president.
Agustín Lecky, a delegate of the Buenos Aires Press Union, also condemned the double standard in the work of the Secretary of Public Media, Hernán Lombardi.
They allow journalists who came in with this government to talk about the supposed tyranny that exists in Venezuela, about the dictator Maduro, but at the same time, they want to sanction those who condemn a clear coup attempt and call Guaidó a self-proclaimed president who was not elected by the Venezuelan people. We do not deal in subjective opinions. We want to inform, and why we denounce that the public television is disappearing from the media map. They are giving away everything to private media. This is the role that this government came to fulfill.
Through a communique, the union warns about other irregularities in the administration of the Cambiemos party, which violate labor laws.
Months before presidential elections, the management of the TVP newscast under Néstor Slaucero decided to incorporate political supervisors to the different emissions of the newscast to carry out tasks similar to those carried out by bosses, but without the required public competition as established by law. They have lower wage, empty out relevant content from our weekly newscast, cancel weekend shows, on top of other violations of the labor laws.
Journalists are being widely persecuted. Ever since the civilian military dictatorship, we haven't seen any sanctions or layoffs due to reasons that threaten freedom of speech.
For press workers, the situation was further aggravated when a news manager fired long-tenured journalists who had been running news programs for many years, showing that no employee is safe.
And like this, we go to a first break here from the South. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Telesur English and on my account at Laura P. Telesur. Stay with us. Now in Egypt, a court has ordered the release of the Al Jazeera journalist Mahmoud Hussein from prison after almost 2.5 years of detention. However, it remains unclear whether he will be freed immediately. In some previous cases, Egyptian authorities delayed the execution of the release for several months. Hussein had been in preventive detention since 2016 without formal charges and a trial or a conviction. He was accused of incitement against the state institutions and broadcasting false news with the aim of spreading chaos. And doctors in Sudan are threatening to go on a strike if protests demanding a civilian government are not met. The doctors gather in front of a hospital to show their solidarity with protesters. Talks on who should lead a governing body between civilians and the military were suspended last month after a disagreement. Protesters have been ongoing since April after former President Omar al-Bashir was ousted from power.
Hospitals in Sudan suffer from a lack of facilities and medicine. Some patients cannot be treated because they can afford it, and they die as the cost of the treatment in hospitals is very high. Some medicines are not even available here. In Sudan, cases of cancer are widespread.
And in Nigeria, police have arrested dozens of kidnappers over the past 2 weeks in operations in the states of Kaduna, Niger and Katsina. According to the authorities, hundreds of rounds of ammunition were seized from the suspects. The arrests and seizures are part of Operation Puff Adder, which was launched to curb a wave of kidnappings in Nigeria. And now we have for you a solidarity story. On March 14, as you remember, Mozambique was devastated by Cyclone Idai, which left more than 600 dead and thousands displaced. Once again, to provide aid after the tragedy, Cuba sent a group of doctors from the International Brigade Henry Reeve. Our correspondent Andre Vieira has traveled to there and has to tell us in fair hands about this humanitarian work. Let's see it.
Beira, capital of the province of Sofala, was the area hardest hit by Cyclone Idai. Throughout the central region of Mozambique, over 600 people lost their lives. 90% of the country was affected by winds of more than 200 kilometers an hour. In response, Cuba sent a brigade of 40 health workers to provide assistance.
I'm not well and came here to see a doctor. My whole body hurts, my head and my back.
Over 20,000 people have been treated by the doctors of the Henry Reeve Brigade since they arrived here. Antonia Manuel lost her home in the cyclone. Ill and with her defenses low, she's one of nearly 300 people who have undergone surgery here.
I am feeling well. I was not eating. I could only take water and soup. But now, I no longer have those problems. The day I was operated, I asked my sister to bring me something to eat, and I feel very well now.
Beyond helping victims of the cyclone, the Cuban doctors are improving the lives of people who have been suffering ailments before the disaster hit.
I had been waiting for 2 years to have surgery in the central hospital. That's why I came here, to get the surgery I need.
And so Antonio Francisco is off to have his operation, something made possible only thanks to the efforts of the Cuban people who have financed all the work of the Henry Reeve Brigade.
To the best of our abilities, we have cured many patients who did not have access to medical care, and much less to surgery.
There is a phrase our commander-in-chief says that us Cubans will never forget, and it's that by providing aid internationally, we are paying back our debt with humanity.
Since it was set up in 2005, the Henry Reeve Medical Brigade has sent over 8,000 Cuban doctors around the world. Here in Mozambique, the land of Zamora Machel, the health workers from revolutionary Cuba are on their 28th mission. These are people who are ready to leave everything to help others around the world.
Desde la ciudad de Beira, capital de la provincia de Sofala, André Vieira y Sebastián Soto, Telesur.
Good story. And now we talk about Libya, where the Prime Minister of the Government of National Accord has met with the tribe leaders during his visit to Tunisia. Fayez al-Sarraj addressed the country's delicate political situation and the need for unity among other issues. Al-Sarraj also spoke to a group of ambassadors to Libya who are stationed in the Tunisian capital for security reasons.
This assault, which has cost us hundreds of deaths from each side, it has no place to be. We were on the brink of resolving the crisis that our country has been experiencing for years through peaceful ways. But this assault has radically destroyed the political process.
In Gabon, President Ali Bongo has sacked his vice president and the forestry ministry amid a timber smuggling scandal. No reason was given for their dismissal, but it comes after 300 containers of Kebasingo wood, which is illegal to export, was discovered at the port. There is a high demand for the wood in Asia, where it is used to make furniture. Nearly two-thirds of Gabon is covered in forests, and the timber industry is essential for the country's economy. At least 2 people have been killed and several others injured in a bomb attack in Somalia. The car bomb exploded near a checkpoint in Mogadishu. Al-Shabaab, the terrorist group, claimed responsibility for the blast, which targeted a convoy escorting officials and lawmakers to the presidential palace. Casualties include members of the security forces. Time for a second and very short break. Stay tuned. And the European Union is heading to the polls to choose a total of 751 parliament delegates. More than 400 million people are eligible to vote in one of the biggest electoral exercises in the world. There will be 4 days of voting across the 28-nation bloc, with UK and Netherlands voting first. Ireland goes to the polls the following day, and the remaining 25 United European Union members will cast their ballots over the weekend. The UK is voting as the country wrestles with its plan to leave the bloc altogether.
I also feel it's important to send a message that we should be in Europe, and whoever we do send to Europe for whatever length of time until Brexit does or doesn't happen should be people that care about the European Union and care about the UK's place in Europe.
Because there's still a lot of power in what's being decided in the in Brussels around Brexit as well. So getting more MPs there who are against Brexit has to have some kind of an effect, I think.
Our correspondent in London, Pablo Navarrete, has more details about these European Union elections.
People in the United Kingdom are today going to the polls to vote for European members of the European Parliament. Now, it is expected that around 40 million Britons are eligible to vote. The election results will be known on Sunday, and this comes in the context of a profound crisis for UK Prime Minister Theresa May, who many are now saying will not last beyond a few more days. According to the Times newspaper, she is expected to have a meeting with Graham Brady, the head of the influential 1922 Club of Conservative MPs, and it is possible that she will have to announce a timetable for her resignation as Prime Minister as early as tomorrow. It is expected that the Conservative Party will do very badly in these Euro elections. with them coming up to third place. It looks like the polls point to the two biggest parties being the main opposition party led by the socialist Jeremy Corbyn and the newly formed Brexit party headed by the far right politician Nigel Farage, who are campaigning exclusively on a Brexit platform. So Theresa May is feeling intense criticism and pressure and is now openly under attack by her cabinet, who are briefing in the newspapers. She suffered another setback yesterday with the resignation of the cabinet minister Andrea Leadsom, and now her position is looking increasingly fragile. So European elections voting takes place today. The results will come in on Sunday. Theresa May's days as Prime Minister of the UK look increasingly numbered.
Thank you, Pablo. And in the Netherlands, Prime Minister Mark Rutte's governing party is fighting to retain its support. Across the bloc, far-right parties are once again predicted to increase their seats to at least 20% of the vote. The political debate has also been around remaining or not in the European Union. The country has a usual low voter turnout. And Spain will be voting on Sunday 26, with Catalan independence playing a prominent role in the election. The lawyer of the exiled former President Charles Puigdemont, Gonzalo Boy, said the candidacy of president's leaders would send a strong message to European Democrats.
It is not about the President Tony Coming or Clara Ponsati entering the European Union Parliament. It is about the list winning, because the list is a message to all the Democrats about what is the way forward. Here, there is only one path: insistence, persistence and triumph. I think that if we get the votes, they are going to know how to respond through their work. But we need one other thing as well. They have the right to go home and sleep there for one night, knowing that the next day they won't be arrested. Why? Because they count on the immunity necessary to do the work they have been doing up until now without the immunity. I think that this is the responsibility of all citizens, not just those from Catalonia. We lawyers have done our work. Now it is up to you.
Meanwhile, the leader of the right-wing Citizens Party, Albert Rivera, was met with silence in the Basque country town of Ugao, Mirabelles. Demonstrators bearing Basque flags turned their back on the leader of the Spanish third biggest party, who was promoting his party ahead of Sunday's election. And now we talk about Brazil. Residents in the Brazilian city of Barão de Cocais fear a nearby dam owned by the company Vale may collapse soon. Earlier this week, state environment officials said a slippage in the embankment of Vale's Congo Soko mine could trigger a dam burst. Over 450 residents have already been evacuated from the area in anticipation. The dam is less than 70 kilometers from Burandinho, where toxic muck from a tailing dam collapsed and killed more than 240 people in late January. And in the United States, a devastating tornado has hit the capital of Missouri, killing at least 3 people. The tornado struck Jefferson City on Wednesday night, with wind speed reaching up to 260 kilometers per hour. It ripped buildings apart, overturned cars, and twisted full-grown trees. At least 170 tornadoes of various extremes have been reported since last Friday across the states of Missouri and Oklahoma. Like this, we come to the end of this report, but you can find this and much more other resources on our website, thrusterenglish.net, where of course you can read opinion article or watch our special interviews. Continue with Telesur, connecting the global south. Until next time, keep on watching.